Okay, so setting up the belt CP. So this is just going to be the process that I use to set up my belt CP. It's also kind of the same process I use to set up my eSmart. But the one thing I do want to tell you, you cannot set up a collective pitch helicopter without a pitch gauge. You have to have a pitch gauge. So go ahead and buy one of these things if you don't have it. This allows you to read the angle of the blades so that you can properly set up the helicopter. It's simple to use, and I'll show you all about it a little bit later in the video. But again, have to have a pitch gauge, set up a collective pitch helicopter. Okay, before I get ready to set up my helicopter, the very first thing that you need to do, unplug your motor. Always unplug your motor anytime you're working on your helicopter, but when you're setting up the helicopter, you have to have it unplugged because you're going to switch the transmitter into idle up and put it at mid stick. And if the motor was plugged in, when we're in this mode, the helicopter would start spinning up and it would do a lot of damage. So unplug your motor, very first step. Next thing though, on your transmitter, turn your transmitter on. You need to make sure that this trim tab, this one, and this one, you need to make sure those are the center. And your throttle trim tab, you're going to want this one at the very bottom. And you can put your throttle stick right in the center. And then up here, make sure this knob is in the center. And you can put it in idle up, which is pulling the switch towards you. So, and I'm going to leave, this is how I'm going to have the transmitter the whole time I'm setting up the helicopter. So I'm just going to set this off to the side here and bring the helicopter up. I'm going to go ahead, plug it in, let everything initialize. Now you're not going to hear any beeping because the motor's unplugged. So the first step is you want to make sure that your servo arms are as close to 90 degrees to the servo as possible. Now, from the factory, a lot of times you're not going to have to mess with the servo arms. If you do have to mess with them, you can just take this screw out in here, and then you can take the servo arm off and adjust it either way to try to get as close to 90 degrees as possible. Now, with the factory FM system and the 2.4 gigahertz systems, you won't be able to get them perfectly 90 degrees. So just try to get it as close as you can. Once you get into a nicer computerized transmitter, then you'll be able to adjust it to perfectly 90 degrees. But again, with the stock systems, try to get it as close as you can. So you got the aileron servo right here, and over here on the other side, you got pitch servo and your elevator servo. And you can see this one would be 90 degrees. So after you've made sure you got all your servo horns as close to 90 degrees as you can, then you want to go through and make sure all the linkages coming up. So like for up here, you want both of these linkages to be identical length so that this servo arm will be level with this one. And then over here, these little controlling arms, you want to try to get these as close to 90 degrees as you can. And the same thing with the one on the other side. So adjusting these links right here and these ones, and again the one like this on the other side, you adjust that so you work for these ones. And then next, we're going to go up to adjust these three links, and the one on the other side here, to adjust the swash plate. You want to make sure the swash plate is level with the frame of the helicopter. Now it needs to be level all the way around, and they actually have tools that you can use that you would take off the head and the washout assembly, and you slide it down over, and you use that to adjust the swash plate links to make sure that that's perfectly level. You can either buy the tool or you can just kind of do it by eye. I do it by eye, but the tools are pretty cheap, so you might want to invest in one of those. And then after you've made sure your swash plate's level, just make sure that your washout arms up here are level also. Now they should be, but if they're not level, that may be because the swash plate is either too high or too low. Because if it's too high or too low, those arms aren't going to be level. But if this is level, these are going to be level. So then these plastic links on the side, they go up. And you just need to make sure that the arms on each side are level with each other. And you can just loosen up the Allen grub screw on the top here, and holding the opposite side, just adjust the one side there, just to make sure that they're level with each other. And then also you want to make sure that your flybar paddles are level with this whole frame up here. So that's when you adjust that. Now these little links on the back of the blade grips here, I usually just make sure that they're the same length, because from the factory I usually don't play with them. But every now and then I find I do have to mess with them when I'm trying to track blades, but not too often. So in general, make sure they're the same length. If you're getting it from the factory, then usually you won't even have to mess with it. But now moving on to checking the pitch on the blades. You need a pitch gauge to check the pitch or the angle on your main blades. There's no way to do this accurately without one of these gauges. And it's really simple to use. All you do, you see this is spring loaded, just clip it over the blade there. And what you're looking to do is you want to line the top of the pitch gauge up with the fly bar in the back. You want to try to get the fly bar level, and then just line up. Let's see if I can adjust the camera here so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, you can see how that's level. What it is you can adjust this gauge. It just slides like this. So what you would do is you would line the top of the pitch gauge up with the fly bar. And once you get that lined up with it, you take a reading, and that's going to tell you what pitch you have on your main blades. You either have negative pitch or positive pitch. Well, you want 0 degrees pitch at mid-stick and idle up on the transmitter. You want to have 0 degrees pitch. So you can see I've already adjusted mine so that I've got 0 degrees pitch. But what I would do is using the long link on the side here, I would either adjust that to be shorter or longer so that I would get 0 degrees pitch on my main blade. So I do this on both sides. Then you just need to check the pitch range. You should have the same amount of pitch going up as you do going down. So go to full positive pitch, take a reading, see what you got, and then go to full negative and take that reading and see what you get. You should have the same amount of pitch going up as you going down. Now, if for some reason you end up with, say, positive 10, negative 6, that means your swash plate is too high. So what you would have to do is you'd actually have to take all 3 links and shorten them so you lower your swash plate a little bit. And if you had, say, negative 10, positive 6, then your swash plate would be too low, so you'd have to raise it. But just make sure that you've got the same amount of pitch going up and down, and you do the same for each blade. Make sure you got 0 degrees pitch, mid-stick, and then check your overall pitch range. Then what you're going to do is go ahead and check the blade tracking. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the helicopter, turn the transmitter off, switch it out of idle up mode, plug the motor back in, and because what I'm going to have to do is I'm actually have to spin the helicopter up to make sure the blades are tracking the same. And what that means is when they're spinning around in circles, sometimes one blade will spin higher than the other one. And you make sure that they're spinning at the same height. So that's called blade tracking, and I'll show you about that here in a second.